Well, hello and welcome back to The Growth Show. In today's episode, you're in for a treat. I am speaking with Linda Melone. She is a conversion copywriter. And in this episode, we do talk about conversion copywriting and what it is and the importance of copy overall. But we are really diving into AI and using artificial intelligence tools to write your copy, improve your copy, and also a lot of different ways that you may not have thought about to use AI tools in your business to just make brainstorming easier and help you kind of do things faster. And also, we do get into some of the ways to use AI responsibly. So we cover quite a bit in this episode, and I am really excited to dive in with you. But let me tell you a little bit about Linda first. Linda Melone is a certified conversion copywriter and award-winning magazine article writer with bylines in hundreds of publications, including Time Magazine, MSN, and the Huffington Post. As a veteran copywriter, she has a talent for crafting compelling stories that get results. She weaves her years working as a personal trainer together with her copy skills to help fitness and health brands find their unique messaging to set themselves apart from their competitors. And today you'll hear a little bit about how Linda made that transition from fitness expert and personal trainer to the world of content writing and then copywriting. So I think this is a journey and interview that is going to resonate with a lot of you. Let's dive in. Welcome, Linda. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me, Whitney.
I'm excited for this conversation. So you are a certified conversion copywriter. Do you mind defining that? Like, how does that differ from other types of?
Yeah, there's a lot of controversy about it. Like, people say that there's no such thing. And the reason I say I'm certified is that I went through a program with a very high-level copywriter, Joanna Wiebe, and she has a certification process that took me about a year to go through. So it's not just something she just gives out. But the difference between conversion copywriting and other types of copywriting, which would include like SEO copywriting, direct response, there's overlap with all of them, but conversion copywriting is specifically geared for helping companies or individuals create revenue through the copy. And the difference between this conversion and some other ones is that it includes things like market sophistication. How sophisticated is your audience? What level of decision making, where are they? In other words, an ad that you see for everyone doesn't take into account where they're coming from. Are they starting to look for something? Are they in pain? Are they aware? Like, there's no level of awareness. Conversion copywriting is like, I take into account, okay, you made an ad and it's going to be coming to this landing page. So I'm going to pick up that conversation from that ad. Like, I will know where they're coming from. So it takes into account just different things like that. But there is definitely some overlap. But the idea is to help you make more money.
Right, exactly. Because, writing a blog post, like, there can certainly be blog posts that are more focused on actually converting a customer into, or a reader into a customer. But a lot of times blogs are informational. They're helping people on their journey, but it's not necessarily looking for a straight sale conversion. Or you're writing emails to your newsletter and to your email list. But sometimes if you're doing a launch or you are doing a sequence, then you would want to employ a conversion copywriter to really narrow in that messaging and all of that. So it's almost like the types of work that you can do as a conversion copywriter are the same types of work that other copywriters might do. But the intent of a conversion copywriter is, like you said, to make sales and actually get those sales for that business. And also the buyer's journey or the customer's journey, which is something that I talk about with my students too, especially when it comes to the different pages of your website and the different messages that you want to be putting out in your blogs and on your social media and all of that. It's a really interesting distinction as well of just saying, okay, there are people who are not even problem aware yet, and they're just looking for information. So what kind of messaging is going on there? So it's just a very focused, strategic approach. And it's not saying that one type of copywriting is better or worse. It's just different intents and different strategies.
Exactly. Yeah. Because if someone doesn't know about you, or if they, first of all, if they're not aware, they call it the unaware stage, they're not even going to be looking. They're probably not even going to land on your website, but it could be that they appear like whatever it is you have as a product or service appears in a Facebook ad. So maybe it just is something they've expressed interest in other ways, and the algorithms picked up on it, but you would require more educating. They would need to know a lot more than someone who is pain aware or solution aware, someone who's aware that there is a solution. So it just determines how much copy, what type of copy, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And especially when it comes to our website and the different pages on our website, I would say probably most of the copy on all of those pages is going to be a more conversion focused content. I mean, we will be educating a little bit and all of that, but people on your services page, they are probably getting close to that point of wanting to buy. And especially on our homepage, we want to be having that copy really dialed in. So I'm imagining that people especially will work with you to really hone in their website copy to make sure that they're actually getting people to want to book a call or make a purchase.
Right. Take some kind of action. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, very cool. Thanks for walking us through that. Because I think, it can be, it's not a term that you hear too often, the conversion copywriter specialty. So, and so you started your career though as a personal trainer, and we kind of have similar, paths in that. Yeah, I started as a dietitian and then pivoted. So I would love to know from your perspective, you started in the health field. What called you to become a copywriter and focus on copywriting?
Well, it's funny because ever since I was a kid, I've always loved writing. Like I'd make up stories. My mom said that my teachers would say, she's got some kind of talent here. I just have always loved it. And so all through my life, so I was a personal trainer, and I would think about doing maybe some, fitness articles. It just was something that's kind of innate within me. And so what happened is I noticed we were getting a free magazine. I was living in Orange County, California at the time. And they had a magazine called OC Metro. It's a free magazine. It was tossed onto our driveway once a week. And I looked at it and had a column that was like a fitness column. And I thought to myself, I can write something like this. And so I was doing in-home personal training at the time. And so I pitched the editor an idea. I said, would you be interested in an article about how to set up your own home gym? Because I'd go into people's homes. They didn't have any idea. How much space do you need for a treadmill? How much, what do you need exactly? And he said, sure, go for it. So I wrote it, and he loved it. I still remember the day. How there's like moments in time where like time freezes. Like he called me, and I remember I was on a call with somebody else, and I saw like the caller ID. I was like, I gotta go. And the editor's like, this is awesome. Would you like to do more writing for us? And we're going to pay you $250. And to me, that was like, I've never been paid for writing. And so long story short, I ended up writing for years for him. I wrote tons of cover stories. Sometimes I had like 4 articles in it. And then I started branching out into national publications. I said, okay, well, this is local. Let me try. And so then I started pitching magazines like Self and Shape. And I didn't get into them right away. But after a while, I started seeing what process I needed to have. Like you really have to do your research to pitch a magazine like that. And I ended up getting in pretty much all of them. I was focusing on the fitness ones, but I was also I've written for Good Housekeeping, for Women's Day, for Family Circle. I won an award for that one. And there's Huffington Post, you name it. And then I kind of burned out. I stopped doing personal training because I was doing so well with the writing. And I ended up doing an online course for women over 50, fitness for women over 50, not realizing how much work was involved. And I just couldn't do it. And I did it for 5 years. And I said, you know what, this is just more work than it's worth. But I want to go back into writing. And I didn't want to do content. A lot of the magazines I had written for, like Self is no longer, Family Circle is no longer. All those magazines folded up. And a lot of them, when they went online, and I did online writing as well, but the pay was like 25% of what I was getting for print. And it was so hard. And they wanted buying all rights, like if you Google my name, because I have an unusual spelling of my last name, you'll find bylines all over the place. And it looks like I'm still writing for these magazines, but they're all repurposed. It's like, oh, she wrote for men's. Like every time I get on Google and I Google my own name, it's like, I could see it all over that they're reprinting it, and so I decided, let me do copywriting, but I didn't know what I was getting into. And I ended up at a fitness conference, and I met the marketing people from Bowflex. I was introduced through a friend of mine who worked with them, and I connected. And this is why, one-on-one is so important. So the marketing person I don't think he's there anymore. He said, we need a writer to write our catalog. Would you be interested? He says, we want somebody who can write kind of snarky. And I'm like, snarky, I am in. Like, I'm all in on the snark. It was like, and I started writing their catalogs, those glossy catalogs you get in the mail that have all their new products. So I started doing that, but I didn't really know what I was doing. I was winging it. Oh, how different could copywriting be than content writing? It's a huge difference. The whole purpose is different. The whole approach is different. And I started having issues with pitching myself as a copywriter. So that's when I said, you know what, let me take this course with Joanna Weave. She's known for this. And so that was like 5 years ago. And so I've pretty much flipped. I still do some blogging for some clients, but I really prefer just the copywriting. But it's a whole different approach than content. So that's what I liked. I like a challenge. So it definitely was.
Yeah. Well, and it's so interesting to hear the progression. And I know that there are a lot of health and wellness professionals out there that also do want to do some content writing as another revenue stream. I think there's a lot of people where they're looking for that creative outlet where they have this expertise and they want to make money serving clients and selling services, but they also want to talk about their knowledge and learn new things, and it can be a great outlet. So it's great to hear how you started by pitching yourself and just kind of snowballing over time, but then saying, yeah, you know what, now I want to move into this other area. And so now you serve other fitness professionals, but also brands and businesses, I'm assuming, with the copywriting services.
Yeah. I mean, I specialize in health and fitness, but I mean, right now I'm working for, a SaaS company, a manufacturer, and I'm open. I mean, copywriting is copywriting. It's the same principles, the same process, but I can fill in the gaps with nutrition, health, and fitness because I just lived it for 20 years. Still am. So, I just know. I've been on expert panels, where I'm the expert for fitness. So, I know it. I mean, I stayed away from it for a while, mainly because I was so burned out. Writing articles, like how many different ways can you walk off the weight? I wanted to just scream. And all the editors, they want a different approach. We need an approach to a walking program that's not been done. It's all been done.
Yeah. Right. And it's like, come on, you're asking me to create something new and then write about it too. It's like, all right. Yeah.
So it was hard, but it really forced me to be creative. I mean, I had to really dig into what's not been done. And it's the same with copywriting, looking for that value proposition. So if you're in the health and nutrition or fitness field, there's so much competition. You really need to look at how are you going to differentiate yourself? And it's not easy to do. I take weeks of research to find out, really find someone's value prop. It's not something that just pops up.
Yeah. Well, that's, on the one hand, it's like, oh man, yeah, it's tough. But on the other hand, it's like, when you get that and you figure that out, that's when you can start really differentiating yourself. And it does take time, and it takes understanding what's going on, what your customers are looking for. And it's a process. It isn't just a light bulb moment. I think sometimes we, as business owners, will go to someone's website or their social media and they'll have this really catchy tagline and we'll be like, man, how are they so smart? That took years to get those insights. They may have someone like you behind the scenes helping them figure that out too. So just take heart that these things that seem so amazing and so clear and so like, oh my gosh, that is the exact way to sum up that product or service or offer. There is a lot of research and thought that went into that. And
Customer
I'm excited.
interviews.
And then we're going to talk through some of that today. But customer interviews and learning all those insights. Yeah, it's a process. Well, let's get into the nuts and bolts of copywriting and specifically AI. So copywriting and writing copy for our websites, our emails, our ads, our social posts. I know that's something that so many business owners do struggle with. If you love it, then that's great. But many of us are out there wanting to serve people, but not necessarily wanting to be copywriting experts ourselves, but it's still something that's part of our businesses every day. We need to be doing it. And a lot of people are turning to AI as a tool, and it's very powerful, but it can be intimidating as well. And there's a lot of talk about it, both good and bad. So today we're hopefully going to clear up a lot of that and have folks feeling, hopefully by the end of this episode, more confident about using AI tools for their copy. So as a copywriter yourself, how are you using AI in your business that people don't talk about as often?
I use it for, it's funny because I keep it open as I'm working, and I do use it as a substitute for Google sometimes if it's, because I know I can get a bunch of information condensed, like I use ChatGPT and I pay for the $20 a month upgrade. Okay. The ways that I've used it that I find most helpful is I put in my client interviews. So if I'm working with a new client and I interview their customers just about their product or what made them change, just the whole usual discovery type of interview, I will take the transcripts, pop it into chat and say, can you pull out the most important points here? And it's not perfect because sometimes I go back, it's like it missed this, but a lot of times it'll pull things out that I didn't really consider in the way that, like when they were talking to me. I just did this yesterday with somebody because I had a discussion on a topic that I wasn't real familiar with. And I said, can you pull out, outline this for me? And so then what I do is I'll go in and if it's a term or something I don't understand, can you please explain this? And by the way, I say please because somebody said, AI one day is going to take over and it's going to
be nice to them too.
Who was polite to us and who wasn't. So just in case, I am trying to be nice to it. So, so I say, please explain. But it's great for that sort of thing, pulling out and outlining. And can you put bullet points in, and I think I mentioned to you, this is how I hired my VA, I told you this. It's not copywriting related, but it shows just how you can use it creatively. I interviewed 4 different people to help me with really just project management. And I had the description, which I actually got from chat, of what I needed. I popped it into Upwork, interviewed 4 people who fit the bill, took all their transcripts, threw the whole thing into chat and said, who's the best person? And it gave me this complete breakdown analysis of this person has this, this, and this, but they don't have this. This other person has this. Only one person had everything, and she's been great. And she was the most expensive person. But they said, this is the person that you're looking for. So things like that, you don't even think about. Like I had, it's like.
I love, my mouth is hanging open. Yeah, we're not doing video. I think that's so amazing. Yeah.
It's something it just popped into my head, but I'm like, okay, how am I going to sort through these? They all sound good. And there's a huge gap in how much they charge per hour. And so I needed to know, and she's worked out, it's been 6 months, I think. And it's been great. So things like that. So outlining, brainstorming is probably the number one thing I use chat for. Even like for newsletters. So I put out a weekly newsletter. I run out of ideas. And the only problem with chat is that it can only pull from what's already been done. But I'll say, usually my typical prompt is, what is a topic that pertains to copywriters that would be good for copywriters and marketers? And sometimes I'll specify in the health and nutrition or fitness field that's not talked about enough or that people get wrong a lot. And so it'll pull, because it does pull from like social media, like Reddit, and I can see it kind of thinking, which is weird. But
the longer it takes, maybe the more it's thinking. I don't know.
Yeah, but it'll pull like, okay, these are ideas. And sometimes it's repetitive. If I do this 2 weeks in a row, a lot of times it'll come up with the same thing. But I will find something and maybe expand on it. So I just keep digging into it. But then I go off on my own. And I'll, like my newsletter this week, here's an example. Somebody on LinkedIn talked about, should you start your your hero section, it's a big section on the homepage, with a positive statement or the pain point. And so he argued back and forth and in his own post, and so I took a piece of that and I said, you know what, I like this idea. And so I asked chat, what are the pros and cons of starting your copy with a pain point versus a positive one? And it came up with a bunch of tips that I will include in my newsletter because it made sense to me. And then I said, well, the only thing I couldn't do, like I said, I was really getting lazy at this point, which I try not to do, but this just, if it's faster.
Sometimes you just ask just in case. You're like, oh, let's just see what happens.
Because if you ask for URLs or links, it can't do that because it just can't. But I ask anyway. I'm thinking, why are they? Because I said, can you give me examples? Because I was having a hard time finding ones that started with a negative. And it couldn't, so, but I said, well, can you give me a list of fitness websites? What are the top fitness websites? And that it can do. So it came up with like 20. So now on my end, I will go into each one, see what the website is about. So it's kind of like brainstorming, going back and forth. I use it for like polishing copy, but I don't always like what it does.
Yeah. I've had to do that. I'm like, can you shorten this and make it more, sometimes I have a tough time using the right prompting words of how I'm like, it always makes it sound so salesy, for lack of a better, too catchy, too, whatever. I'm like, can you dial that down? And it never does. So, and I think that's an interesting point too, is just, it isn't a fail safe. It's not like you should go and use it and then copy and paste it into whatever.
No.
It's a tool, and it's a brainstorming tool. And I really like your idea about taking inputs that are original inputs, like interviews with clients and customers. And I think that could be a really valuable thing for all business owners who are listening right now to do, is these customer interviews. And I don't know that I haven't really heard people talk about this a whole lot as one of, I think in the copywriting circles, it's like, yes, you do customer interviews, but I don't know that in marketing in general, it's talked about. But basically, and you can fill in the gaps here, is you're going and just talking to some customers to understand a little bit, have them elaborate on what were their pain points, what do they like about the service, what made them choose that service over other ones. You just kind of have some questions, and it's just an informal interview, right?
Right. And I also, one of the questions I ask is what was, depending on the service or product, of course, what was your life like before? Walk me through what has changed, throughout your day. So if it's a software, okay, well, I used to struggle with all this paperwork and tech would be down, or I didn't have access to the website or to a network. And now I do because I can use this product, that kind of thing. Oh, I have asked it to find and I don't know, I have to go back and I always double check anything I ask. If it's something super important like this, I'll say, what are people saying about this? And it can pull some, and I don't know how, I haven't used it for that much, but what are people saying about, say it's a new nutrition program or something. What are the pros and cons you've heard? Because it pulls from online, so it can get, quotes. Yeah. But that's something that, I think it's probably, I would use that in limited amounts because you'd still have to talk to people, but it kind of gives you a start. A lot of these prompts just give you a place to start, it takes away that writer's block where you just don't know what to say. That's what I find. It really helps. Sometimes it's just sitting there I don't even know where to start with this whole thing. I've had it pull together, what should I include in a contract with a new client? Based on our conversation, what is it that I want to make sure I have? And just so I know, okay, I have all those points. I've been relying on it more and more, and it's never for writing. It's always for that kind of thing.
Interesting. The brainstorming. Yeah. And I think it's very common for business owners we're so close to our businesses to be sitting there and thinking, what the heck are we going to write about? And so doing that brainstorming. And then I love the idea of, if you are gathering some insights from some customers and doing a few calls, letting them know. And I think even for new business owners, if you have a few early customers and you're just having a hard time finding the right words, and because the importance of copy on our websites, which is something I talk about quite a bit, is forming that connection and showing that empathy and getting our customers to see themselves in the copy on our website. So if we are not using words that they would use to describe their problems and what they're looking for, then they're not going to get that feeling that we actually know them, and therefore they're not going to trust that we have the right solution. But if they start being like, she is reading my mind right now, how the heck did she come up with exactly what I'm thinking? And I've been telling my spouse last night about what I'm going through. That's when you know you have connected with someone, and then they're going to be like, well, whatever she's suggesting, I have a good idea that that's probably going to work for me, because I already feel like she's understanding what I'm talking about. And so getting those words from our customers can be really critical. But yeah, the thought of interviewing 4 or 3 of your customers and then having to distill all of that information into a brief, that's a lot of work. But if you do those interviews, record them, get the transcripts, upload them into ChatGPT, and then say, I need you to help me write the headline for my website, or I need to write a really great problem statement for just below the fold on my homepage to really connect with customers, then there's some really great information from there. And it really, when it comes to the writing process and using AI tools, it's really the quality of the content you put in is the quality that you're going to get out. Because like you said, otherwise, if you're asking it to write original content, it's just basing it off of what else has already been written.
Been over and over. Another way I used it that really saved me time is I had a client come to me and she says, I have 4 personas that I want to target. I'm like, 4? And she sent me this huge chart of all this information. And this is one of the first times I used it for this purpose. I threw all of that into chat and said, please pull out what is common among all these personas. Because when you're writing a homepage, your homepage has to capture everyone, which is why it's the hardest page to write. Like, I had a copywriting coach that said, your first step in writing a homepage is to tear your hair out, because you're going to be doing it anyway. Because it's really, you have to capture people at all different stages of awareness. They might be pain aware. They might be solution. They might have heard of you. They might not have. You don't know where they're coming from, search engine, but they land on your homepage. So that had to capture all the different potential personas. So I said, all right, what are the commonalities that I should include? And so it pulled that out. It did that for me with all this, because I didn't even know how to start with it. It was so much. And it really, it helped tremendously. Just, it's a big time saver to do that. And then you go back in and make sure it included everything. I always double check it. So
Yep, absolutely. I love that, because I think for a lot of health professionals too, they might be serving a few different types of conditions or people with different things going on. And that is a common struggle that I hear is just, well, how do I have to have 2 different websites? Do I have to have 2 completely different parts of my website? And it's like, that homepage needs to make both or 3 or 4 of those people feel like this is the place for them. And how do you do that? And I do recommend looking for that commonality, but I love using ChatGPT in that way. You feed it some information about, okay, well, here's a bit about each of these different people that I'm trying to reach. You tell me what the commonalities are and some keywords or positioning statements that I can use that are going to resonate with all of those people. I love that. Oh.
Yeah. And just so good. Note, the homepage is actually, I tell people, it's really like the information desk of your website. So it's like you walk into a big business complex and you don't know where you're going, go up to the front desk, and it should direct you to where you want to be. So it's like, it doesn't, because I've seen some homepages that are pretty short. Mine's fairly long, but you want to have enough that people will know, okay, I need to go here next. So this is like, that's why you see buttons like start here, or if you're new, or, something that lets people say, okay, I know where to go.
Right. Yeah. They need to be able to take their own journey and figure out where they need to go, because that's the whole point of our websites too, is to be that initial kind of salesperson interaction spot, just like you said, that information desk, because when we have a website that is doing that work for us, we don't need to be getting on so many calls, answering so many emails. And plus, we don't know who's coming to our website and finding us from Google and all of that. And we want that machine working in the background so that people are routing themselves to the right spot, getting the right information, and then getting on the phone with you once they've already gotten a little bit more qualified, more knowledgeable about your services, and feeling like, okay, this is the right thing for me. So
Right.
I love that.
Exactly.
So what are some of the pitfalls to avoid, though, when people are using AI for their copy?
To not use it verbatim for copy, because one of the things that it does really well, because people use the same words over and over, is what I call, well, a lot of people call it marketing speak. It's those corporate words that sound impressive and they're just real fluffy. And it's like, it loves the word. Oh, there's a bunch of them, because I know I always ask it for ideas with titles. And it's always about uncover or,
Oh, yeah.
now I'm drawing a blank on all of it, but they're just words that are overused, and you see them on every title. Up level your, whatever, discover this. You want to make sure that it's something that's unique, and it loves colons. Why does it love colons so much? It always has one part of the title, and then the second. And you can ask it, can you give me titles without colons? Just, I need a 5-word title, because I do ask it to help with podcasts, and it's pretty good with it. Like if it knows enough, but you always want to put your own spin on it. You always want to humanize it and make sure the voice is right. I've been on there was one AI site that I don't use anymore because of this. It said, we can copy your voice and we can make it sound like it was written by you. It was awful. And I said, this is not how I sound. And I couldn't adjust it. And it's not that I would have used it anyway, but I'm always playing around to see how well these things work. But yeah, you always want to check it for your voice and your words. I'm constantly deleting words that it puts in. And because if it sounds like something that you could read on any site, don't use it, because then everyone's using it.
Yeah.
It can't,
and people know.
Yeah, it can't create. It can only repeat. Like I even asked Chat itself, what are the disadvantages? And it said that ChatGPT is not a creation tool. It's gathering what's already been done. So you want something different and unique, you have to do that yourself.
Oh my gosh, that is so good, because there are so many examples. And I remember maybe a couple months ago, there was this ad on Instagram of like, create a 10-page e-guide in 5 minutes with ChatGPT. And there's so many people saying basically that it's going to create things for you. And that's such a good point. And it told you itself, I do not create things.
I'm just gathering information.
Yeah, and putting it all together. Yeah, I think that's just such a good point, and something to consider. And we give people a guide. We offer a guide for AI copywriting for your website. And I'll just hammer again this point of like, and I hate to say it, but like garbage in, garbage out. If you are not, you can't ask ChatGPT to describe your services if you are not already giving some information about what your services are. I mean, I think what is a challenge for a lot of business owners is we can tell the facts about what we offer, but we don't necessarily, we're talking about the features, but not the benefits. And I think using a tool like ChatGPT to help us get more of that marketing copywriting speak to get people to connect with the product, that's great, but we need to put in some information first and then definitely check it, because I have found that ChatGPT will just make things up.
Yeah. Did you hear about the pizza that used glue? The recipe from Chat. There was somebody asked, it was in the news because it was so ludicrous. Somebody asked ChatGPT to come up with a pizza recipe, and they did a screenshot on this article, and it said to use non-toxic glue to make the cheese stickier.
Oh my gosh.
So it's not perfect. Can you imagine? But if you don't know and you're just on here like, well, if Chat says that, it's like you just never take anything for face value from it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so on a serious note, especially because we are in the health and wellness and nutrition and fitness space, and there can be risks with giving people incorrect information. And so I think one of those, because there are those ethical considerations that are coming up when it comes to the use of AI and content creation and, or, not creation, but pulling together of just making sure that what you're putting out there is still factually correct. And so that goes to that point again of you can use it to start coalescing ideas from the internet and all of that, but then you do need to go back and check that that was accurate. You may want to cite your sources depending on what kind of information you're doing. And that can be tough that it sounds like ChatGPT can't really cite its sources so much.
It can though.
Oh, it can? Okay.
If you ask it, if you say, please provide links to all of this information, because I've done that and I didn't know I could do that either. And it will.
Okay.
But yeah, I always go back to, because my years of working as a content writer and article writer, I'd be writing for these magazines that require my list of sources. And, it's government sources. It's, it's sources that are either professional, like MD, PhD, whoever I interviewed, but it can't just be, nothing was my opinion or nothing was just, I pulled this out of the air. But you have to really look, especially with health and nutrition and fitness. There's so much misinformation. So here's the thing. So there's so much misinformation out there. And where's ChatGPT pulling from? Right? Yeah. So you're going to get things like non-toxic, glue to put in your cheese pizza because somebody somewhere must have said that. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, one of the things I heard maybe a year ago were some of these content writers feeling like they're coming to take our jobs. These computers and machines are coming to write the articles and all of that. And I think this just goes to prove the point that there is no replacement for the experts. Your 20 years of experience in the industry, my years of schooling and all of that is still what allows me to pick the bull from the real stuff. And so going down, we have a link to an article that is where this came from, but actually reading that article and discerning, because the lay people that are reading are not necessarily having enough information to discern what is real and what's not. And so it's still on us as the experts. And that's what continues to make us the experts and show that we are valuable and the people to be going to. And because I've seen people saying, well, I'll just go get a meal plan from ChatGPT. I'll just go and ask for a treatment plan for this, or, you can go ask it for those things, but is it real? Is it accurate? Is it safe? That's where an expert comes in.
I always feel like these trends, and not that ChatGPT is a trend. I mean, it's a pretty big deal, but I think it's like we're still kind of in that honeymoon phase where it's like, we can use it for everything. And then eventually it's going to level off where people are going to say, like what you just said, and also the empathy. You can't write somebody who's looking for a health solution or fitness solution. You need to have empathy for that person. I've written enough of these articles and interviewed people who've had heart attacks or who've, survived something that is absolutely awful. You don't get that vibe from ChatGPT. You need to talk to people. You need to be able to have a heart to heart, and that gets infused into your copy. And it's something you can't get from a robot.
Right.
At least not.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they're improving it all the time, but it takes time, and until that point, it's still really important. And those are the things that get people to want to work with us, because we are the real people sitting here helping them and having that empathy. And there is no replacement for that. Yeah. Well, lots of ground covered in this interview. And one more like fun little thing, I guess. We've talked about your process for a lot of different things, but maybe you could just quickly take us through, like, what is your process for brainstorming like a title for your podcast episodes using AI?
Well, I use AI for a couple of different, I use it in a few different ways. So I take the transcript and I will put it into, I'll use Fireflies. So if it's not already recorded on Fireflies, it's a recording device. So I put it in there, which does give me an outline. And then I will take that outline, I'll look at it, I'll pop that into ChatGPT and ask it, give me, please give me 10 to 12 titles that would be engaging, that would be, and I describe what I want it to do. And usually I end up piecing it together from a couple of things like, oh, that's a pretty good idea. But then, I use it all the time for that. There's also something, and I can send you the link if you want to put it in your show notes it's a headline analyzer, and you can pop the headline into it and it'll give you the chances, like I forget how it grades it, but I use that quite a bit for how likely it is that people will click on it. So
and that. Okay, I love it. And that goes for blog posts too. Anyone putting blog posts, I think that same process probably would work for that. I mean, you also want to be thinking of the keywords that you've researched and all of that. But coming up with the title after you've written the content. Sometimes we're like, okay, let me come up with this really catchy title first. It's like, no, you can actually record the content and all of that and then have that inform it.
It's the last thing I do. In fact, my podcast editor, I'll send him everything and say, here, you can start editing this, but I need a day or two to come up with a title. And he knows that, because that's the hardest thing, because people, if they don't get past your title, they're not going to listen to the podcast, they're not going to read the copy. So
so good. And I'm sure you could probably do that if you're really having a tough time with your headline on your website, or just need a little bit more kind of help with that. Even though that's a slightly different piece of copy, you probably could still, if you had copy from the rest of your homepage or other pages of your site, probably pop that in, and just any kind of content that you can feed into these tools to then summarize and start giving you some ideas to pull from.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Love it.
In the end, it's always about testing too, what A/B testing, that kind of thing, because that's the final word. Is like they have to, what is really going to work and what are people clicking on. So,
right. So how would you test? Like, would you just kind of test like, okay, well, this is a theory I'm going to use for podcast titles for a bit, and then see how that goes versus others, or would you put things head to head for a little while?
If it's a newsletter title, there's ways. I use ConvertKit. And you can A/B test on the subject line. So I use that. I haven't done much with podcast titles yet. I just sort of see what people are listening to more than others. And like how-to titles tend to do really well.
Right.
I include keywords that I know people might be searching for. And sometimes it's a little less creative, but the keywords are what are going to help people find you.
Right.
So,
Yeah. It's a mixture of a bunch of things. And that's a really good point about subject lines too, because it's the same thing. If the subject line of your email is not attention grabbing, it really does not matter what is in that newsletter and that email.
No one's going to see it.
Yeah. So it's important. And I do love that idea of doing the A/B testing. I definitely have played around with like, should I capitalize all of the letters or should I keep it lowercase? How long should it be? Should I have an emoji? Should I not? Where should the emoji be?
It's such a psychological, thing. It's so hard, and no one has the absolute answer. It's just a matter of testing and trying, and then there's always that person that's going to say, also, everything you're doing is wrong. It's like, all right.
Right. And then it's just letting it go, because we don't have time to test every little thing in our businesses. And I think it can start feeling overwhelming when you do get that advice of like testing. It's like, we don't mean test everything all the time,
right.
But go around and kind of like, okay, maybe I'm going to do some tests now for my subject lines for a little bit and observe that and see how that's going. And sometimes you can learn things from there that you can then apply to other parts of your business as well and whatnot. So testing within reason. Well, Linda, this has been so much fun. I feel like we have covered so much ground, and I know that listeners are going to get a lot out of this.
Well, I have my website, which is thecopyworks.com, WORX.com, or you can just email me at linda@thecopyworks.com. And I'm on LinkedIn. I am sometimes on Instagram with some reels, but it's mainly LinkedIn is my main platform.
Love it. Great. We'll have those in the show notes. And then you also have a weekly newsletter that really gives some great content and insights, some things that you don't even publish, I think, on the social platforms too. So we'll have a link for people to join your newsletter, because I think people will get a lot of value out of that as well.
Yeah. It comes out every Thursday.
Okay. Perfect. Great. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on, Whitney. I appreciate it.
Well, if you couldn't tell, I thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with Linda, and I got a lot of great ideas about how to continue using ChatGPT in my business to make my life easier and speed up some of the things that I have to do on a day-to-day basis. And I love the idea of continuing to use it to brainstorm. And it's always really great to get these perspectives of folks about what prompts they're putting into AI tools and how they're using it to really make sure that the output is really great, because it can be super frustrating to be sitting there using that tool and just not getting the results you want. So I hope Linda's tips and advice really resonated, and do make sure that you sign up to her newsletter, which is linked in the show notes, so you can get even more advice and tips from her every single week. And I do want to mention, if you are in the process of building a website or thinking about creating a website for your business, and copywriting is one of those things that you are really dreading, I have great news. That is something that we cover in our program, the Wellness Pro Website System. So in addition to having a beautiful website installed for you on WordPress and using one of our beautiful designs, we also give you copywriting templates for every single page of your site. And that way you are going to not be sitting there staring at a blank screen. You're actually going to know every single section you need to write. And now with the tools and tips that we talked about in today's episode, you can really figure out how to use ChatGPT to make that copywriting process even faster. So the doors for the Wellness Pro Website System will be opening soon. All you have to do to get on the wait list is go to wellnessprowebsite.com to check it out, and then you'll be the first to know when enrollment begins. All right, thanks for listening, and I will see you in next week's episode.